Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back, Tuesday Night Live. This is going to be a really fun one. Have one of my really good friends, Matt Cantrell, on, who is fresh off running the Barkley Marathons. So we're going to get started with him. He's on right now. He'll be back. Well, I'll be back after I play this little extra video. Let a few more people join. Make sure if you're here watching live, put in the chat where you're watching from, shout you out, and get your questions for Matt ready. He's told me that he's going to give me all the Barkley secrets. So with that, let's get started. All right, what's up, Matt? You're live. Say hello to everyone.
Right. Hello.
Yeah,
Good to
thanks
see
for
you.
joining. Yeah, this is awesome. I'm so happy to finally get you on. We are longtime friends. We've been running kind of into each other at races for years, and then have ended up just being able to spend a whole lot of time on the trail. So really, really excited to have you on. So thank you so much for joining.
I'm glad to be here. I really enjoyed watching the intro, and I have no secrets to share, so I don't know what that was all about.
Oh yeah, by the way, that was a joke. Everybody, don't get too excited. He's gonna be respectful of the race and respectful of everything going on with that. So, but you can ask any questions you want, and Matt will either answer them or pass. So, as you know, the
Everything
Barkley
about the race is already out there, right? Like, so
Yeah.
there are no secrets.
Yeah, I mean, like, if you just go to the website, like, you can find all the information. And I think isn't it on Ultra Sign Up as well right now? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So, all right, let's just shout a couple people out. We got Justin is in from Tulsa, Oklahoma. Liam's here. What's up? Ashley Blake from Oak Ridge, Tennessee. That's pretty close to probably where the Barkley Marathons is. Super chat from Make the Best of What's Around. Thank you so much. That is awesome. S. Russell, San Antonio. Drew H. Ryan, what's up from Michigan? Awesome. Eduardo's in the house. Aaron Townsend. Eric the Red is on time. Thanks for joining. Tyler from Colorado Springs. Congrats on 10K. Thank you so much. Carlos from Puerto Rico is in the house. Congrats on 10K. Thank you. Sarah O from San Francisco. Excited for this interview. Awesome. I think there's a lot of people that are really excited about this interview, Matt.
I don't know.
John's here. Hey, Matt and Ryan. Love the 10,000 video. Love the intro to that one. Thank you. Yeah.
Good job.
All right, cool. So let's talk about, just tell me a little bit about kind of like how you got into ultra running. And were you always an athlete, like, growing up? Did you like do cross country? Like, how did you get into running really a lot of miles at one time?
I'll try to stay really brief about this. No, I was not like a runner in my younger days. I was not in cross country or track or anything like that. I was in marching band, which is quite a bit more athletic than people may think. And I had a lot of arguments with people back in high school about that. But it wasn't really until my undergraduate days when I realized I was packing on some pounds that I figured that I should start actually exercising. And I thought, what can I do that's easy, so to speak? And I realized, my dad has been running for a long time. He's done half marathons and marathons, and I'm going to try to start exercising and get myself in better shape, and also really kind of try to spend some time with him. And so I started like that. My dad literally wrote me out a 5-month calendar of runs to do my first mini marathon. And that was in Indianapolis. And then it became 5 or 6 months later, I was doing my first marathon, and it was like that for quite a while. And then he introduced me to the lovely world of ultra marathons, and I did my first 50 with him out in California. And I swore that I would never do one again because I chafed so bad and had so much pain after that. It was a horrible experience.
What race was that? Oh, Laura,
that
thank
was,
you.
Helen Klein.
Helen Klein.
Yeah.
Nice.
And we were far enough over the deadline that they had started packing up the finish line.
Oh my
God! Rained all day. It rained all day, and I was so painful. And I literally told my parents, I will never do this again. Marathons are cool, but why would I subject myself to this? And then it was a week later. I'm like, I can do better. I can do better than that. So, one thing led to another, and then in around 2011, 2012, we did this trail marathon, it was a marathon 50K 50 miler, but we did the marathon, my dad and I together, as the Navajo and Dances with Dirt.
Oh yeah, I've done that one. Mm-hmm.
It blew our minds. We were road runners to that point, and running on trails, there's just the relative difficulty and going up and down hills and being in nature, and the fact that it kicked our butts. We were just, again, it's one of those things, this is way more than what we expected, but it was beautiful. And it was, a week later, it's let's do more of that.
Yeah. So what year was this that you got into your first, when was your first ultra? Do you remember what year that was?
I think the first, asphalt ultra was maybe 2010 or so. But then the trails started coming in around 2012. And that's when my dad and I really started, searching for 50 milers and 100 milers that were trails. And that was that time period, that year or two, was, pretty life-changing.
Yeah. That's awesome. So how long did it take, a really common question I get is, how long does it take, how experienced do you have to be to run your first 100? What type of progression should I take? So what was your progression from the time you maybe say first marathon distance up to 100 miler? How long did that take you to do?
I think my first marathon I completed somewhere around 2006, 2007. First 50 was somewhere around 2010, and then the first 100 was 2012. And I had, I'll be the first to admit, I have a lot of DNFs, and I didn't make the time cutoff and things like that. So, I tend to be somebody, and I think my dad, who's watching, I think he's in the same boat and wouldn't get mad at me for saying this. We tend to bite off more than we can chew. And, so we're let's go try that thing. And, and then it doesn't work. And then, we try another 5 times, and hopefully at some point it works. So, it kind of, that's a relative question, because it kind of depends on the amount of time that you have available for training. I've always just trained on the side, and this has been the thing that keeps me, physically healthy, but also mentally healthy. And it was not until this year that it sort of became a second job.
Yeah. So perfect lead into, tell me more about your life outside of running, family, job, what does it look like when you're not running?
So it's a little bit hectic. So I'm a veterinarian. I graduated from vet school at Purdue, Boiler Up
Go
in
Boilers.
2010.
Yep.
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 And so I've been a veterinarian for we're about a month away from 11 years now. And there was a long lead into that, but now 11 years later, I own 2 practices and I'm managing a third one. And, there's a lot of work involved in life. But, I have a wonderful, beautiful wife and 2 beautiful children, a 10-year-old boy and a 3-year-old girl. And, we try to live life to its fullest. So if we're not doing something for work, we're either out camping or running, trying to do something fun.
And that's one thing that I'm always like impressed and I guess probably also envious of you of how much you guys camp. And I mean that camper you guys have is like, you can't hear me?
Hear me?
I can hear you. Yeah.
Did something go out? Right now.
Oh no, we have some technical difficulties. I can hear you and everyone else can hear you. So maybe your headphones just got disconnected or something. I'll keep talking. So the way that Matt and I met, we kind of talked about this. Like we were on the call like right before and we were trying to remember how we met. And it was like we're both Indiana runners. And so we would just kind of like meet up kind of like randomly at Matt's texting me right now. He says he's sorry. He's trying to fix it. So we met like a couple times, like a marathon and then a 50 miler. And we were actually like really close to each other running during this 150 miler and kind of talked at the end of it and kind of like exchanged like social medias and stuff. And then ever since then, just kind of like stayed in touch. And then in 2019, go ahead. Then in 2019, I'm gonna disconnect him, and then we're gonna come back as soon as he comes back on. 2019, I was trying to run the Midwest Super Slam, and he was also running a couple of those races as well. And let me bring him back in. Let's see here. Can you hear me now, Matt? I can hear him, so it looks like he's still having some problems. Darn, maybe we'll have to try this again in a little bit. But we basically ran all of the Mohican 100 together until about mile 80 when he was having some problems and didn't end up finishing. And then I also fell. That was the race that I fell at and tore cartilage in my ankle. But then a couple months later, we met up again at the Hallucination 100, and we ran pretty much step for step during that whole race together. So Matt and I have spent a lot of time on the trail together. And he's trying to get his headphones figured out. He says he's back now. Can you hear me, Matt?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, we're back. Yes. What happened? Was it your headphones? Your headphones dropped connection or something?
It might have been. I don't know. I worked all sorts of different things around the computer, and
it's all good. It's all good.
Yep, refresh.
Yep. So no, that was perfect though. I was just explaining kind of like how the races that we ran together, like Mohican and Hallucination. I didn't tell any of your embarrassing stories. I left those all for you to tell.
Maybe you should though. I don't know. Maybe it's better from a different perspective.
If your headphones drop again, I will tell you those really embarrassing stories.
That's good. Yep.
So
you've got the best.
Yeah. So let's get right into talking about Barkley stuff. And again, for all of you out there, like Barkley is a very, there's a lot of secrets that revolve around Barkley. So feel free to ask any questions, put them in the chat. I'm actually setting aside some ones that I want to ask him. So if I don't ask it right away, don't worry, just stick around, keep asking. There's a little star function and I can like pull them up here in a second. So first one, let's just get right into it. Actually, no, let's take a couple questions and then we'll go back and we'll talk about kind of like how you got into Barkley, and how you started, like getting interested in it. So we'll circle back around to that here in just a second. But Jonathan Elk says, Matt, at any point did you imagine that you were a prisoner running for your life?
I wouldn't say that. I know the background of the run and, that there's a lot of studying and, just sort of trying to understand the roots of it. No, I wouldn't say running for my life from anything, more just trying not to embarrass myself.
Yeah, there you go.
Just don't get lost on the first book is kind of, the first goal to accomplish.
Nice. Aaron Townsend says, hey, Matt, how delightful is that climb up Rat Jaw?
Well, I don't know, Aaron, if you've done BFC, but from what I hear from some of my friends, it was quite delightful compared to what the BFC provides you. It was very slippery. There were some moments where I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to get up this particular little spot without just falling back down and taking Carl out with me. But like that climb is so iconic that there was a certain level of just, absolute delight of being there. It didn't matter how much it hurt,
Yeah.
But the briars and the thorns were not all that bad this year.
Nice. Awesome. Labe has a question, tuning in from Bedford, Indiana. Matt, does the navigation slow you down more than the elevation for this race?
I guess it kind of depends on who you are. So for me, there were some early stages where the navigation, I was letting it slow me down, I guess I'll say. And that was part of the learning experience, was just like kind of going with things and just knowing, okay, I'm heading in the right direction. I'm following this, particular groove. So trusting that. But there's no getting around that, the climbing is just brutal. Just, whatever, 50, 75% of the time, you're just just trying to get up a hill.
Yeah. So when was it that you actually started to become interested in Barkley?
It was probably, I guess, the same time that everybody else did. So, the documentary, The Race That Eats Its Young, came out, and I saw that. And like many, many ultra runners, it was one of those documentaries that spoke to me. I felt like it captured how I felt about these runs. And then there was that added little element of, wow, that race director has the same last name as me.
Yeah.
So that, that one thing led to another, in terms of the interest, I guess. And I'll say right now, because this is the absolute truth. My parents saw that documentary first, and then we watched it at some holiday gathering. They were like, you need to see this, with the rest of my family, who are all, pretty enthusiastic about running ultras. And I remember like watching it, and not just that day, but multiple days thereafter, I was like, I am not stupid enough to try to get into this run. Like, I will not. There's no point in somebody like me trying to get into this thing. So, the interest was piqued for the same reason that it was for most people. And I didn't ever think that I would even try, but one thing led to another, and it happened.
Yeah. So, without sharing like secrets, what's kind of like a 10,000 foot view of like kind of like the race, like history, like how you get in? Is there anything official out there? Is it just like somebody gives you a phone call and you find out that you're running the next day? Like, how does it work?
I think there's a lot of different things that can happen.
Mm-hmm.
But what I would tell, anybody out there is like, if you want it bad enough and you believe in yourself enough, you can figure it out.
Yeah. Cause there's no,
it's
not just a race that you go sign up for.
No, it's, you can't go, like you said earlier, tongue in cheek, like you can't go find it on an ultra sign up and get on the wait list and then your name's going to get called. There's a couple different avenues, but you got to figure it out. That's part of the challenge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So was there a period of time where, like how long was it that you knew you were going to be running it? Like how long did you have to actually prepare?
You'd think I would have done a better job knowing what I'm about to say, but I guess it was about 3 to 4 years, in that time range. I was on the list, and COVID really kind of messed with things in terms of how quickly I thought things were going to happen. 2020, there was a brief period of time, very, very brief period of time where my name got called, and I was like, there's no way, for multiple reasons. But I guess I would say I knew as of about November this year, it really kind of dawned on me, like, it's happening. November of 2020. It's going to happen. I wrote a little report that's been published now on Cactus to Clouds, and I said in there, like, it was November that it hit me. COVID is raging. I don't think anybody's going to be getting into this country easily, and I know where I'm at on the list, and numbers wise, like, it's going to happen. So
yeah,
it was really November of 2020 is when I actually started training like it was going to happen, which I probably should have been doing for the past 4 years.
So because typically, what is it, like maybe half Americans, or is it more? Is it half from overseas? And then this year it was like pretty much all people from the US, right?
Almost. Yeah. There were a couple of exceptions, but yeah, pretty much a all American race.
Yeah. So when you, there's a couple, so John Clark, thanks. We kind of just answered your question. How many years were you on the wait list? James has a question. How do you train for a race where most of the details are secret? So that's a good question to lead into kind of like, so starting in November, when you, it dawned on you that this was a reality, your name's going to get called. What'd you start doing?
Well, in November, I also had COVID, and it was about that. So it was during those 2 weeks where I was quarantined at home, like with like nothing else to do. I was like, first of all, I have to do something. I can't just sit in my house. So I was running on the treadmill, which is not recommended by medical professionals, FYI.
So you had COVID in November.
I did, yeah. And I started running, with some enthusiasm during that. And while I was running, I felt good. At night with COVID, I didn't feel great. But that aside, November, I focused on, I'm out of shape and I need to get myself in shape. And so I did a lot of treadmill running. November in Indiana's not like a super fun month, in my opinion.
Yeah.
it's like the reverse of April. So it's like doom and gloom.
Pretty much like November through March is like, it's tough.
Yeah. The whole time that I was training. So
yeah, exactly.
So I did a lot of like just, running on the treadmill to try to get ready, and then to try to get back into shape because I was out of shape. And December was more or less the same, just keep continuing to try to build that base up and try to get some aerobic fitness back into me. I did quite a few runs while I was visiting my in-laws in Florida in December that helped with that. And then it was like January was when I really started like what I would call Barkley specific training. And I started doing elevation. So I was lucky enough to get an elevation trainer on Nordic track. And so I did a ton of work on the Nordic track the past few months. And then whenever I could, I would go out onto the trails. And I would go to Brown County here in Indiana to try to run up and down some of the bigger hills that we have in Indiana, which are not huge, but just running up and down them is helpful.
Yeah.
And then finally, I guess probably the biggest piece that like sticks in my mind is I made multiple specific attempts to go down to Frozen Head and run around the park trails. So 3 different weekends, once in January, once or I guess twice in February. And, I just tried to do as many miles in Frozen Head as I could, both for fitness reasons, but also specifically to really look at the terrain and try to familiarize myself with what everything looked like.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. We'll come to that here in a minute. Did you have are you the type of person that trains with like specific number goals, or are you just like, I'm going to go out and go as hard as I can, as long as I can? Or is it like, did you have a plan, or were you just going for it?
Yeah, I did have a plan, which I, at the time I just essentially was like, I want to finish. I want to finish the thing. So I'm going to go to the top level, and I read so many of those race reports that are out there, looking at John Kelly and Gary Robbins and so on and so forth. All these reports where they said, here's how many miles that we ran, here's how much elevation we tried to gain in that time period. And I'm like, like if I'm going to do this run, I'm going to try to do that.
Yeah.
So I wrote out that plan, and it worked for like 2 to 3 weeks. I was like on track, and then it started becoming like, for me personally, in that moment, I guess, unattainable.
So what was that specifically? That plan?
I think it's what's that plan? Well, I can't quote all the numbers, I guess. But, that's something you can look up and put together from reports. But I will say this: by the time Barkley came around, I had 185,000 feet of elevation gain. I was at about 650 miles for the year. My goal,
and that's in less than 3 months.
Less than 3 months, yeah.
Yeah.
And my goal at that point, if I had hit every single goal, I would have gotten to about 750 miles by early March, and I would have gotten to 200 some thousand feet of elevation gain. So I didn't hit that, but every freaking week, I was trying my best to get close to that.
Yeah.
Towards the end, I was getting 70-mile weeks, and my initial goal was to be getting 100-mile weeks. So, it's good. I have no regrets about that. You're talking to somebody who previously my better weeks were like 20 to 25-mile weeks. So it was a life-changing experience.
Yeah. And you're doing all this on top of working, not only working, but like you run your own business and you have a family.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah, it was, and I couldn't have done that by myself. I mean, you can read that in quite a few reports, but like there is, for at least for me personally, there was no flipping way that I could have even gotten close to doing one loop without like the sacrifice of my wife, and my kids would be like, oh, Dad's on the treadmill. Cool. We'll see him when we go to bed.
Yeah. So
my daughter is right here, so I'm gonna give her a kiss really quick before bed.
Sounds good.
But go ahead, you can ask a question really quick if you want. I love you.
So, you did all this training. You got yourself in probably some of the best shape you've been in, and for sure years, it sounds like, or ever. Okay.
Ever.
Yeah. And then what's it like knowing that you're like just a couple days out from Barkley and you're making the trip down there? And not to mention, like, you've already been there a couple times this year because you've camped out there and ran the park trails to train. But what's it like going down there for the actual race? What's it like showing up, seeing all the people? I mean, some of these people, I mean, they're all regular people, but some of them are like literal, like the superstars of the ultra running community. Like, what's it like just getting in there and you've got a day or two to go? Talk me through that.
It was a wonderful experience. So thankfully I had been there. So I had already been through like the mystique of the park itself. So I didn't have, a couple days before the run, I wasn't like, oh, that's the visitor center, and that's, Old Mac Trailhead, and, that's Big Cove Campground. Like I had been to all those places. So that was all done and settled. And I got there before most people, which for me, I feel like was good. I've always been somebody who relied a lot on my family, to be quite honest. Like, I like that emotional support. And for this particular event, I did not have the family emotional support. And so like getting there 5 days in advance was, I think, a really good thing for me. And also the 3 trips that I made to Frozen Head previously were all totally by myself too. So, it was good to sort of like, for this race, try to spend some time just doing a little bit of disconnecting to like strengthen my brain, my inner being, I guess. Yeah. I'm not saying it's not good to have family and loved ones around you, but I think there's times that we can be a lot more self-sufficient than what we realize. Anyway, that was all past, and it was, even with that, it was still somewhat otherworldly, just knowing what was coming, being there, just sort of trying to stick to some rough plan that I had of get this thing ready and then that thing ready, and then keep yourself kind of moving, but don't overdo it. It was an interesting few days. But people did start rolling in, and I met some really, really cool people, that again, without this race, I may not have met. I had a 2 to 3 hour conversation with another barker outside of the visitor center, just on a sort of a whim. I met a guy from Illinois named Cameron, who is an awesome runner, who, again, like, never would have met him, but I was there a couple days in advance, and he just happened to be there, sort of finishing up a trip of his own. So that kind of stuff kept me busy, I guess I would say. Yeah. But when it came down to it, there was this giant thing that I didn't really know exactly what to expect. That was just looming.
Yeah. And were there specific like changes to campground, or like how many people could stay there due to COVID this year?
There were changes to our crew, so everybody was allowed one crew member. So that was different from previous years.
Yeah.
And something that I think when it comes down to like running the Barkley, if you have an obstacle, I guess you could call that an obstacle, but like, no matter what it is, you just got to figure it out. So that's kind of what I was alluding to earlier, I guess. It's just like, I really like having my family, my wife around me during a run. And for this particular one, like, I had to figure out how to not do that or not need that, I guess.
Yeah.
So yeah, there were some restrictions as far as that goes. But I don't feel like that took away from the experience. I mean, maybe even to some extent that it enhanced it, making it more of a personal thing and not like a group thing.
Yeah. No, I totally hear what you're saying there. Do a couple questions real quick. And then we'll get into the start of the race. Graham, thanks for the super chat. Says Toronto, Canada, checking in. Matt, what was your favorite memory from this year's race, and what would you do differently next time? So let's answer that, and then right off the top, let's just tell, what was your favorite memory?
That's a difficult question to answer. Just
do you remember any of it?
I do. I remember, pretty much all of it, but it's such and I realize I tend to sometimes overuse the word beautiful, but at the same time, like I try not to. Like, I really mean it. Like, the whole experience is just this big, beautiful event that, I don't ever want to forget. But I guess I would default to saying like the funniest thing, which is one of the more memorable things of the whole weekend, was leading into the start. I had got no sleep because I was studying all day long. I mean, like, I was so serious about studying the maps and the instructions. I studied until like 10:30 p.m., didn't get any sleep because it poured down rain for hours. And I could not like think, as I was trying to sleep inside my rental van. All I could hear was just the sound of like major rain. And, the conch was blown. I heard that. I didn't need to be woken up because I was awake. I got right to business. I got right to getting ready, and I knew what I needed to do. And as soon as I got clothes on, I went up and I went to collect my watch, which ended up being a pocket watch, timepiece, so to speak. And I just remember laughing out loud, like such an unexpected little thing, which, obviously this race is known for throwing obstacles in front of you and whatnot. And I really didn't see that as a huge one. It was more of a, how awesome. I get to, hang this thing on my wall at some point. But, that was hilarious. And then to build on that, so I took that watch back to camp. I'm continuing to get ready, and my crew, which again, I did not get to have family for my crew. So I had an awesome human being named Aaron Helms, who, I was introduced to through this race, and, he crewed me, and we ran together one time previously, but, essentially all of our communication besides that one day in the park was through email. And he did an amazing job. He was totally all in there for me. I brought this, pocket watch back to him, and I'm laughing, and I'm like, look what Laz gave to me. And like 10 minutes later, I'm like, hey, you have the watch. And he's like, yeah. And you know what? I'm going to paraphrase here just because I don't know what the language restriction is on your channel, Ryan. But he's like, that jerk set the time wrong. I fixed it. I fixed it for you.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm like, oh, Aaron, thank you. But it's Barkley time. Can you reset it? Like it's supposed to say midnight when we go. So like that whole hour prior to actually starting the run is super memorable, mostly just because of the pocket watch and everything around it.
Gosh, that's hilarious. So were you able to get it back to the right time quickly, or
Oh yeah.
did you have to go ask somebody? Or
no, I mean Aaron took care of it. It was just, it's a pocket watch, and you just like you take up the little knob and you spin it,
put it right back. Yeah.
Yeah, he did. It was perfect. And in that moment, I mean, again, it was, for me, it was like, man, if this is the worst thing that happens, like we are good to go. This is no big deal. It was really just, I was happy for that moment, to have that humor, not to be thinking about, I guess, what was about to come.
Mm-hmm. So so you're getting dressed. I mean, you're preparing for, just so people understand, this race. If you don't know, go watch the documentary on Netflix. But it's a looped course, and you're preparing for anywhere between somewhere like 10 to maybe 24 hours to be out there on a loop, right? And you got to be self-sufficient. So what's going through your head? Like, what are you preparing? What are you bringing out with you?
Well, pretty much all that stuff I had ready. And, my goal for that hour was get dressed, make sure I've done all the necessary things to be out there. Squirrel's nut butter is a great product. And, you make sure you don't forget that kind of stuff.
Yep.
And, just get dressed, go to the bathroom, have some fluids, have some food. The difficult thing, I guess, not knowing what the time is that the race is going to start. You can't exactly prepare for like, this is going to be my breakfast, So,
yeah.
I had an idea of what I might try to, force down my throat breakfast wise. But when it came down to it at 3:00 in the morning, I'm like, I'm going to have a banana and a little milkshake. And like, that's all I can really take right now. Mm-hmm. But I had, my pack was packed. I had 3,000 calories worth of lots of different food stuff in there. I've really taken a liking to liquid IV as an electrolyte drink mix this year. And so I had all of the packs that I needed to mix with water at the water drops. So I had all that stuff ready.
Yeah.
And really just that hour was just about get dressed, do the necessities, and get up to the starting line. And, it took that whole amount of time. I like walked up with 3 minutes to go. And, that's one thing I would, if I, fingers crossed, pray to the heavens, like if I ever got a chance to go back and embarrass myself again, I would, I would actually probably go to bed with my clothes on. Cause just getting dressed wasted a little bit of time.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, I don't know, I made it up there. I've literally arrived to start lines late before. So just the fact that I made it up there 3 minutes in advance was, a big win for me.
Didn't we start late at Mohican, or?
I think you did.
Okay.
I can't remember if I did. But there, Dances with Dirt one year, I definitely arrived like 2 minutes late. Like everybody was already gone, and I'm like still trying to get my shoes tied. So we're in the same boat there.
I started Dances with Dirt late one time too, because I was in a porta potty.
Maybe I'm good. Yeah. Hey.
I was, in there and heard everybody start and came out and ran up to the start line and no one's there anymore and just ran right through and people were like, "Oh, I guess he's starting." So yeah. But yeah, Mohican, I had a mix up with one of my drop bags. I didn't know where I was supposed to put it or something. And then, I was trying to figure that out. And I think eventually I just ended up throwing it in your truck or something and ran to the start line as everyone's going. So,
I forgot about that. It's funny, like when you do multiple of these races, all of your little debacles start running together.
Yeah, they do. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, does it really matter? 1 or 2 minutes? Not really.
Nope.
So you're walking up to the start line. James asks, how many people run the race each year? So how many people are you up there with?
So I think that's one of those details I didn't focus on too much this year was what are the actual numbers. I think we were around 36. Maybe it's been 38, is around there. Every year I think the goal is somewhere around 40. So this year, just being COVID related and whatnot, like it was just a challenging year to fill out the field. But we had a wonderful group of people.
Awesome. And John Clark asks, were you trying to stick with veterans who knew the course fairly well? So like leading up to it, in like the documentary, you can see people hanging out at the park tables, like talking, like looking over the map, talking about stuff. Were you mingling with people trying to figure out if I'm going to be able to stick with some people, or like what was your how were you attacking that part of it? Like, did you know that you were going to stick with a couple people?
So that was, to be quite honest, probably one of the more stressful, like pre-race mental games that I had. I went into this race essentially a complete unknown. I didn't really have any friends running this race. I didn't know anybody, and I'm, I guess, just a little bit too much of an introvert to really go out and try to figure all that out and try to put myself out there. So in a way, that was a wonderful experience for me because November through March was an intensely personal experience, of growth and, improving myself. So that's great. But when I got there, that was a big concern, was like, this is a really, really difficult thing to do by yourself. And I understand, I guess, where I'm at relative to, some of these other athletes, and that, I would probably find myself in need of, teaming up with somebody. So that was a concern. I went so far as to like Strava stalking a few people and even convinced myself that like I may be on the same level as, this one particular guy who is, an amazing dude. And I sent a message to him. I was like, I just want you to know before you realize somebody's like, just like riding your coattails, like, I just want to introduce myself. And I tell you what, within 10 seconds of the cigarette being lit, I knew that he was well out of my league, along with most of the course, or most of the people, yeah, I tried to find those people, and play that strategy. But at the end of the day, I'm I guess lucky to have been there. And, I realized some of my limitations pretty quickly.
So what happened right after the cigarette was lit?
Everybody started running. At least that's how it feels to me. I don't know. There might've been a few people behind me, who didn't, but it just like, I had my eyes on this one dude, and it just honestly felt like everybody ran. I'm like, I thought only a few people would run at this part. So, I jogged up to, the trail junction, sort of mid to 75% of the way back in the pack. And then literally all the way up the first ascent, most of the field just pulled quickly away from me. Even people, who were behind me for some reason, which, I hope, like Jamil Corey is like an amazing person. I hope this isn't like something that is like a secret or anything, but he was behind me for a little bit. I don't know if he was like messing with something, some piece of gear wasn't working, but like I was like ahead of him for like one or two switchbacks, and then like all of a sudden it was just like boop 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 boop, and he's gone. Gone like with everybody. So so that was my experience of the first climb up Bird Mountain. Was like, oh my God, like I'm at the back of the pack, and
so are people running or are they just hiking really fast?
Well, I have no clue because I was hiking once I hit the switchbacks, but it was so. Remember, it was 3:00 in the morning, so it's obviously dark, but it was so damn foggy that essentially you just saw headlamps in the dark, and you didn't even see those for very long. So so I don't know. They were. The majority of the field, I would guess, was power hiking, but to me, it just felt like they were running away from me.
So within a couple minutes, you're pretty much totally alone?
There were one or two people who were around me for like, half to all the way up. And we ended up actually teaming up for the first book. So, I was not alone at book one. And that was good because the first descent was out of this world, and I'm glad I wasn't totally alone for that. I had
what do you mean?
I had headlamps to shoot for. That first ascend, which a lot of people know from race reports, is Checkmate Hill. I guess at this point, close to 4:00 in the morning. So, very dark outside, very, very foggy. And it had been raining for hours and hours prior to that. Mm-hmm. So my memory of descending Checkmate Hill was roaring water. So just the noise of water all around me. The two virgins that I was with essentially just like picking paths and descending a lot faster than I felt like I could. And, I did get caught in like my first and only major briar entanglement on that hill, which was painful and like, just don't want that to happen again. By the end of that hill, I was cramping, sweating profusely, creek jumping from rock to rock and going through little ravines. And, and at the end of that descent, we're right where we needed to be. But, for the entire descent, it was just noise and the absolute largeness of what we were trying to undertake was just like slapping me in the face and dragging me along the ground with it.
Yeah. So something I've always wondered is when people that run the Barkley are going up or going down, I mean, a lot of it's off trail, so there's brush everywhere. Are people just like the people that are good at Barkley, are they really good at getting around everything and picking their steps, or are they just crashing through stuff with like no regard for safety? Like when you're descending, when you're descending with those other people, like were they just like barreling down because it's dark, it's raining, you got a headlamp, or are people just like they get into the Barkley really good at like picking their feet picking their footsteps and getting around obstacles?
I definitely think that there's probably a bit of both, but like from my perspective, just as, pretty much like coming into this year, just your everyday, ultra running type of person who just wants to finish a race. It's incomprehensible to me. I clearly, because they pulled away from me within minutes, I was not there to watch them, but to me, going back and watching, documentaries and seeing the way that people's legs look, and I did get to brush elbows a little bit with a couple of what I like to call the superhumans. I mean, just amazing athletes who, pass us coming back on, they were on loop 2 and we were, trying to close in on finishing loop 1. I saw a little bit of that, and it just seems to me that it's yes, they can pick their path, I guess, better, and there's that just foot-eye coordination that I guess, like, to some extent you can work on. But I also do think that there's a disregard for safety and that they are crashing through things that, like, I have the luxury knowing at some point in the race that I, was not going to get as far as I had hoped. I had the luxury of picking my path. And I don't think that the people who are in the lead are doing that. I think they're just making it down that hill as fast as they possibly can.
Mm-hmm. Gosh, that's crazy.
Like I said, it's incomprehensible to me. And having been there, I mean, I guess it's something that I would love to learn and, continue to push myself, to try to figure out. But as of this moment, I don't understand it.
Yeah. So let's take a couple questions and then we'll get into, I want to ask you about like what it was like finding books and how you made your way around. So William says, hello from North Carolina. Have always wondered, how do the runners and crews interact with the park staff? I'd imagine that the rangers aren't fans of doing search parties for missing runners.
Park staff was amazing. And I guess I'll say that even from the lead in, I was there 3 different weekends before the race, and I always checked in, which, is you're supposed to do that. If you're going to take a big loop around the park, you should tell the park staff that where you are and what your cell phone number is and stuff like that. So, they were lovely as can be and always extremely friendly. And then as far as like the actual race, I guess I'll say week goes, it was like a whole nother level. Like, at least from my perspective, again, just extreme friendliness, and they know that we are not out there to get picked up by them either. So I think there's sort of a level
you don't want them to come.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like, that's like, I don't know, goal number 1 outside of just obviously doing as good as we can is do not get picked up by the park.
Yeah.
So yeah, they were super kind.
Awesome. Joviat says, just dropping by to say hello. Matt, you're crazy for doing it. Also, why don't most people wear long pants? Is it too hot?
I would guess that's part of it. I did wear long pants, partially just because of, I guess, like what I knew about the park, having been there, and how, the temperatures from bottom to top fluctuate, majorly. I will say I did not have I had some scratches on my legs. I had one splinter that I took out like a week later, but nothing too much.
A week later?
Yeah. Which, I mean, like, I feel like is like really minor now compared to what I've seen in some of these documentaries of like, how long were they picking things out of their skin?
So were you wearing pants the whole time, or did you wear shorts?
I did.
Yeah.
I wore pants, and I don't, The time that I was the hottest was in like the very first climb, second, first climb, first descent, second climb, second descent. Like that was where I was pushing myself, I guess, the most. And the pants may have contributed to that, but I was also dressed for rain on top as well. If I had to go back, I mean, if it wasn't an 80-degree day, like I would wear pants too. It just seems to make sense.
Nice. Joe Ely, thanks for stopping by, Joe. Says, I'd love to hear more of your impressions of Laz.
What can I say? Laz is he's a very good-hearted person. He may not want everybody to know that, but I mean that's the root of it. He's a good-hearted person who I think is inspiring humanity in his own unique way.
That's a really good way to put it. Awesome. So, you made it up and down, kind of the first climb and descent. You found your first book. You're kind of around some other people. You've settled into the race. You're a couple hours into it. You kind of understand like how hard this is going to be. Were there times like early on where you were really doubting yourself, or did it take longer to really get to that place of doubt, or did you ever experience it?
Oh, I for sure experienced it. And it was mainly on that first descent on Checkmate, because the two virgins I was with I was really trying hard to stick with them. And I mentioned I was like sweating profusely and I was already starting to cramp, which cramping is not new to me, but at the same time, like it should not be happening that early.
Like your legs or your side or what?
Legs. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I mean, just because you're dealing with all this terrain and, you're jumping over things and getting your foot caught in something here and doing, well, I cannot do the splits, period. That would end my day, but like almost doing the splits because you've just slid. And, so for me, like any of those movements really like will potentially initiate a cramp if I'm, exerting myself too much. So I was exerting myself too much. And, it was like essentially in that moment, physically, it was everything I could do just to like sort of keep up with them. Mm-hmm. And at the bottom, they got to the creek, they crossed it. I, was trying very hard to keep up with them, but I was, starting that next climb, I was like half a switchback behind them. And then all the way up, I just saw them gradually, and it was a painful, gradual experience of them slipping away from me. And at that point in time, I had decided, I've done this long enough. I know if I continue to exert myself, I'm just going to bonk out like very soon.
Yeah.
And so I knew what I had to do to stay within myself. And I knew pretty much on that second climb, I needed to start pounding hydration. I needed to start pounding calories. But it's still very difficult to watch them, slip away from me. Mm-hmm. So we got to the top of the next climb and there's a book there. And by the time I got there, they were gone. Like I literally just like saw their headlamps going down as I came up. And so I was alone at the summit of the next hill. And so I ended up actually finding that book totally by myself, which was one of the most memorable experiences for me of the whole race. I guess like proud moments, pat myself on the back type of things. Like I, amidst, 5 a.m. dark and ridiculous fog and, wind and the conditions that Frozen Head places on you, nobody around me. I found my first book alone on book 2. And it took a couple of, gut check moments of like, you're checking your compass and you're like, what am I really where I think I am? Yes, I am. Like, trust yourself, trust the compass. Everybody wants to, like, I guess, blame their compass for not working at times. It's like, no, just you need to trust your compass. Your compass is right. And so, yeah, for me, that was a very, very much a defining moment of the race, was just finding that book. And then, that's 2 out of 13, and you figure out how to get to the next book.
Yeah. So how, like, did you, when you were looking for that book, or any of them, I guess, throughout the race, were there any that were just like impossible to find, or you couldn't, like, you just got really frustrated?
So I can't say, I can't say that I had that kind of experience from there. I had book 1, which a group of 3 virgins found pretty readily. Book 2, which I found by myself. From book 3 on through the end of the loop, I was with other people. And a couple of those other people were highly, highly, highly experienced. So, on our way to book 3, I did pick up a teammate, and, we navigated down most of the way the next descent. And then we actually teamed up with a bigger group, that had some, like I said, super experienced people. And the rest of the way around the loop was, initially for me, was just a game of try to keep up, because if you don't keep up with these people, essentially, in a way, like in my mind, I guess, like the race is over. And so for a while it was just keep up with these people. And, then as the calories started, having their positive effect on me, and I got rehydrated and all that, I was able to focus a little bit more on, like, here's where we are and here's what we're doing types of things with the race. But there was never a moment where it was like, oh crap, we're lost. We have no idea what to do. Because, at that point I was blessed to be with, some amazing navigators.
Yeah. And so, like, when you're with these other people and you're trying to keep up with them, like, how much are you in that effort level where it's, like, really uncomfortable? Or is it a fairly moderate effort level the whole time? I mean, obviously the terrain is just ridiculous, but, like, your heart, your lungs, your legs, like, are you constantly in that, like, maybe, like, say, like zone 3, like race zone, or is it a lot of, like, just kind of like you're moving and it's just a constant forward motion?
I think it's a lot of difficulty. I mean, especially for somebody like me, I go back to, like, I trained really well for this. And so some of the just gnarly climbs, I could make it up a decent amount of that climb and feel pretty good. I mean, it's not easy, but, like, that's where my legs were. Like, I knew how to get there and I was doing fine. 75% of the way up there is when, you start, like, okay, like, I got to take a rest here. I got to, keep going, rest for a second. So, I think the ascents were hard, more like aerobically and just getting up them. The thing that probably surprised me, and this is actually one of the things that I would change if I had the opportunity to train again for something like this. Like, I really did virtually no major hardcore descent training. I did some, but, like, not nearly as much as I should have. So, like, descents, especially on a slippery surface, were really, really difficult for me. So some people may have, experienced things a little bit differently from me, but, like, actually descending was the hardest part for me.
Yeah. No, makes sense. I mean, especially living in Indiana, like we don't have very many opportunities to do that. We've got treadmills. We can go up all day long. Yeah. Labe has a question. How do you navigate at night with a compass when you can't see back sights or objects in the distance to stay on line?
So, one of the things that was helpful to me in those first couple hours of darkness was, I had sort of calculated, what the lines were. And when I got out there, I had a nice, like, for me anyway, everybody has their preferences, but I really like the fact that I had a wrist compass that had a sight for the line. And so, like, I would take, bearing. I did a lot of memorization in the 24 hours prior to the race actually starting. And so I knew when I got to a certain point and I got, X book, I needed to then take a bearing of X number. And I had a watch compass that essentially, I just held it up and found that bearing, and then I would go in that direction.
Nice.
And again, I was very, very fortunate to fall in line with a group of people who very much knew what they were doing navigation wise. And so, like, it was not make or break for me to utilize that skill. But for the first two books, for me, I used that quite a bit, and it was working very well, albeit a little slow.
Yeah. Sorry. John Clark says, I heard book 7 was difficult to find from other interviews. Was it more difficult to find? Do you remember which one was book 7?
I do remember which one was book 7. And it was, it was something that tripped a lot of people up. And I guess, like, from my experience, partly I have to say that just wasn't my experience because I was in that group, we had Hiram Rogers and Carl and even some of the other people that I was there with, like, knew the area. And so, or at least sort of vaguely knew the area. So, like, there was this, sort of like, we always knew we were heading in the right direction type of a thing.
Yeah.
And we weren't going to get stuck, like, looking for something for 2 hours. So,
yeah.
That was my experience. Now, why did that happen to other people? I think it's not just that book. You could say this for a lot of them, but if you mess up one thing and you cross a creek too soon, or you end up on the other side of a ridge line, the largeness, again, the scale of this race, that one ridgeline or that one creek is really going to mess you up.
Yeah. How easy is it to do that, to just accidentally find yourself on the other side of a ridge?
I imagine it's very easy. from what happened to me, just from book 1 to book 3. I mean, like, I have a very clear memory of coming down, to book 3 from, well, I guess I'll back up and say book 1, after book 1, descending. To me, part of the difficulty there was not really understanding the line that my teammates, I guess I'll say at that moment, were taking. I felt pretty strongly we should be on a ridge line, like, up higher, but we were kind of like navigating down with a creek. And so it's very easy to get, like, in that mode of, like, I feel like I'm going in the right direction. This may be difficult, but I'm kind of afraid to go back over there, for some people that may end up like a mistake that takes them a mile off course.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 'Cause I think that was in a documentary or a YouTube video I watched a couple years ago where people were talking about that. Is like, you might actually know the right way, but the person that you're just following is going the wrong way. I mean, that can happen in a regular ultra, like on marked trails anyway. Someone can take a wrong turn. I did that, and I was during no business. There was the trail was like weaving in and out of a service road, and I missed just one left turn and ended up like a quarter mile down this service road and saw headlights like up the mountain. And fortunately it was Russell. And he was like, "Ryan, is that you?" It was in the dark. I was like, "Russell, is that you? What the heck?" So backtracked. But yeah, even in regular ultras, it's easy to do that.
Yeah, I would imagine that pretty much everybody listening right now has, if they've done an ultra, they've been off trail for at least a little bit.
Yeah.
But that's, like you said, that's marked, and you can usually kind of like reorient yourself and start searching for other people. In this environment, if you're off for that long, most of us have done the work that we know how to get ourselves out of that situation, but at the same time that can have a really negative impact on what the ultimate goal is, which is, obviously trying to actually finish the race.
Yeah. So John Clark asks, would the type of shoes matter for technical slippery descents, or was everyone falling?
I think the type of shoes, certainly could play an impact. I saw some of the other, what I truly think of as superhumans with mud all over their butts. So I know that people were falling. I think, to be quite honest, one of the things I took away from that week and that race was the shoes matter, but it's more experience in what you've trained your body, to do, your hand-foot coordination and what your muscles are ready to take care of in terms of little, slips and grooves, I guess. So, my body was not ready for that. So I fell often. Yeah.
Yeah. I had obviously like Barkley is just something completely different, but the race I did a week and a half ago, I was very concerned about what type of shoes I was going to wear. And then, ended up getting in the race, and it was so muddy that I probably could have been wearing any shoes and it wouldn't have made much difference. There's a certain point where, like, once the conditions become so bad, as long as the shoes are just going to stay on your feet, they're good enough.
Yeah.
And so I can imagine that that's kind of like at the Barkley, like certain pieces of gear, like maybe a certain type of jacket or pants or something that's really protecting you or keeping you warm is going to be extremely important. And shoes definitely too. You don't want shoes that are going to cause you pain. But at a certain point, there's probably almost like you get to this area where almost like no shoes are going to make shoes aren't making a difference as long as you're staying on your feet and they're keeping you fairly comfortable.
Right. Yeah. I think you said all that perfectly. And again, the thing that I came to respect the most is how much your body really impacts that. I think we all focus on the shoes a lot, but you got to be ready for that. You got to, we have so many muscles in our body that do like little minor adjustments for ourselves that we hardly ever use. And in that race, you use it.
Yeah. So, Dallin Rick says, Matt, what was your favorite, most memorable part of the whole event you'll always remember? And you kind of already told the story of the watch before the race, but let's take this question, like, while you're on the loop, what was one of the most memorable parts? Was there something that happened out there that you'll never forget? I mean, you kind of mentioned it might be like maybe finding one of the books on your own. But yeah, what would you say, like when you're out on that loop, what was something that was really memorable?
Yeah, I had what I call multiple Barkley defining moments, and we've already been through a few of them. And I'll kind of squish a few together, I think, here. But like, I would say the memorable parts were like, again, like I feel so blessed to have fallen in with like a wonderful group of people. We had two veterans who were super experienced, and then there was a group of us who were doing this for the first time, who I hope I brought something to the group, but I for sure the others each brought, their own like personalities, whether that be positivity or like quiet confidence, the relentless forward progress. Like each person that I was with was unique and just wonderful to be around. So that was an awesome experience that I'll never forget. And building on that, one of those defining moments was actually like losing one of those teammates or compatriots. We went up one of the iconic climbs, and a few of us kind of got to the top before the rest of the group, and then the rest of the group kind of trickled in, and finally it was there were 5 of us there, and the 6th one was still kind of farther down, and we're kind of trying to debate as a group, like, do we stay or do we go? And we called out a few times and we didn't get answers. And for me, a lot of my like personality and my life is sort of built around empathy and caring for other things, especially beings that don't have voices, and
being a
so it's very difficult for me in that moment, to sort of put that part of myself aside and say, like, this is your race, like, don't forget that, and we need to move on. So as a group, we moved on. We all knew that there was not like a true like threat or danger in that situation. It felt bad to kind of know that sort of that race was ending for that person in that moment, but like, but at the same time, we knew it'd be okay, and we knew, if we want to achieve our goals, which is getting all the way around this loop today, like we've got to keep going, and so we went. Yeah.
So what was that like coming in to finish that loop?
Oh, I couldn't stop smiling. It was just, it was amazing. You for those of us, I guess like most of us being in a similar boat, like we've seen these documentaries, and we've heard taps played, 1,000 times, and to come into that and know that that's coming for you, like, for me, it was not, a moment of like, I have failed and, I need to go home and feel bad about this and figure this out. It was like I failed, and I'm super happy about where I'm at, and I'm so much better than I was 4 months ago. And I have, this, I'm taking away these like glimpses of what's possible, to move forward with. And so like, to me, it was just like coming in and being tapped out was just a wonderful experience, that, I just couldn't have been happier in that moment.
Yeah. So how long did it take you guys to get around?
I think we came in about 18 and a half hours.
Okay.
Which, to be quite honest, like we, at a certain point, 12 to 14 hours in, like clearly we know like we're over time. And so like we started kind of taking a certain amount of breaks just to make sure that, we're not going to have a heart attack at the top of the next hill. But, so we generally continued to move the whole time, and, there's a lot of motion.
Yeah. Ashley Blake says, did you bring a lucky charm?
Did I bring a lucky charm? I had a few things on me that were meaningful, and I'll try not to subject everyone to like a too much emotion here. But when I found out that I was on the wait list for the Barkley Marathons, one of the first people that I told was my friend Jake Pickett, who was a Boone County Sheriff's deputy, and about a month or two after that, he was killed in the line of duty. And I'll never forget, in that moment, we watched the documentary together. We shared moments of like him being just super enthusiastic and happy, for me that I had this challenge and this thing in front of me that was going to expand my horizons. And I'll never ever forget that moment, and the fact that we watched that together, it will always sit with me in my heart. And 2 months later, he was gone. So I did wear one of my little wristbands that I've been wearing for the past 3.5 years or so. Actually, I had two on that day, and the other one is I'm no longer wearing it, but it's going to end up in my shadow box of Barkley memorabilia. So that was, I don't know if it brought me any luck that day, but it certainly meant a lot to me.
Yeah.
I felt like he was kind of there with me that day.
Yeah.
And then I also enjoyed just the little bit of humor that wearing this hat out there on the course brought. Books and Brews is a little local, brew pub here in Indianapolis. And I will freely admit that I'm not sometimes creative or smart enough to realize. I literally was like halfway through the run that I was like, oh, like I'm out here looking for books, and this is quite the appropriate hat to be wearing.
Yeah.
It wasn't anything that was planned, but I felt good. I'm looking for books, and as soon as I get done with this run, I'm going to have a beer. So yeah, those are, I guess, like the two things I wore with me that have a little bit of sentiment to them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that stuff, like, that can really help. So what was some of the, you mentioned kind of at the beginning that you, or maybe this was like in our, something that we talked about offline, but that it was just just really like transformative, like going through this event, like just you feel like it really changed you. So kind of like what did you take away from it? And maybe some of it isn't even, you can't define it yet, but kind of like how did you feel like coming home afterwards after this race?
Just amazingly lucky, first of all. Again, like it is very hard for somebody like me to like define how big and majestic and beautiful like that entire experience really was. I mean, from meeting the people that I met, to putting myself out there in something that is so still beyond, comprehension for me in terms of like how it could actually be finished, to, sort of brushing elbows with people who actually could legitimately finish something like that on a given year, who have amazing, but still human abilities. The whole experience was, again, sort of beyond, definition, but I would say, something that I've told people quite a bit is that I feel like I leveled up that weekend in my understanding of what humans can do, what we can put ourselves against and actually excel at. And so a takeaway for me is, if other people can do that, I can certainly continue pushing myself to try to achieve bigger and better things. And, I think, I guess those are the biggest takeaways.
Yeah. If you, how are you feeling now? Like physically, like, are you fully recovered? Do you think like the loop that you did, was that similar to running a 50 miler? Was similar to running 100? Like how's your recovery been afterwards?
Yeah, recovery wise, like I'm good. And actually, like 2 days later, I climbed up to the Frozen Head Tower with my family, with my daughter on my shoulders.
Nice.
75% of the way up there and the way back. So like I'm still in great shape. Like that week did not ruin me. I would say it's hard to define. If you've read Frozen Ed's book, like there's that direct comparison to one loop being kind of like a 50 miler. And I would say in terms of, I guess time, yes. I don't feel like I was as sore as I would have been like on a really hard run 50 miler, if I was really trying to push my limits on time. So there's that, I could have, I had it within me to keep going. I'll say that. But I was too slow, which is the story of my life.
John says, do you plan to reapply in 2022?
I hope that I am blessed with an opportunity again to do this in the future.
Nice.
It's one of those things. As again, a caring person, I would really love for other people to get the same kind of opportunity that I have. Is again like what I feel like a everyday person who had a transformative experience. Again, like I'm in the best shape of my life because of this run. To some extent because of the fear that this run created in me. But it sort of was the impetus for getting to another level for me. And, I hope that other people experience that same type of thing. But at the same time, like, I don't want you to get in because I want to have another chance.
Exactly. Yeah. So what do you have coming up? I think we're running the same race in a couple weeks.
Yeah, we need to talk some details on what you're hoping for and what I'm hoping for.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're doing Cruel Jewel next month, which is a hard run, and I've been trying to make sure that I remember that. Doing something like the Barkley sort of sets you in this mindset of like what's harder than this, but everything is relative. I only did one loop there, and I went around a full loop, but it was 18 and a half hours. I'm still got for sure my work cut out for me at Cruel Jewel. And
so when you signed up,
that,
go ahead.
I was just going to say in preparation for that to some extent, but also building off of my Barkley experience, about a week and a half from now, I'm going to try my first orienteering event. I'm going to go out. I'm going to go out and do a 12-hour Rogaine by myself.
Nice.
So we'll see how that goes. But my goal for that day is, try not to break too many rules. Do as best as I can within the structure of that event, but mostly just get as many miles as I can, off trail. So hopefully that'll end up being a good training day for Cruel Jewel.
Yeah. So did you sign up for Cruel Jewel before you knew you were in Barkley or after? Like, how'd that happen? Because these are pretty close together.
I can't remember. I'm pretty darn sure that like you're the reason that I signed up for Cruel Jewel. I do tend to like look for things, but also I'm pretty sure either I saw you say that you were going to do it, or maybe you told me directly.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, like let's sign up for that. I signed up for it to run in May of 2020. And I knew, back when we signed up that I really didn't have a chance of getting into the Barkley in 2020. So I had no fear or worries about those two events overlapping. Mm-hmm. But I'm really kind of glad, I guess, the way it worked out that, again, however that is, it is what it is. I trained my butt off to do what I did at the Barkley this year. Yeah. And I feel like it's a great springboard, to go at the Cruel Jewel next month. And then we'll see what the rest of the year brings.
Yeah. Well, I mean, all the training you've put in it's really going to pay off. In my opinion, like just from looking at this race, like it's not a running race. It's a up and down climbing race. And so I think your training probably is well suited for the Cruel Jewel.
Yeah, I'm not going to get frustrated by not being able to run. That's for sure.
Yeah.
That's all I've been doing this entire year is just continuing to move.
Yeah.
Not necessarily fast.
Yeah. Well, I'm getting to the point where I am like, I've been on the treadmill so much that like just running outside, like for just a couple miles, like out in the sun is like the best thing ever.
Yeah. I totally agree with you.
Boat. Yeah.
Yeah. I went out today before we got on here and I just ran out on some farm roads by my house and just feeling the sun.
Yeah.
And the ground underneath me. Like, I'm running.
It feels good. Yeah. Today I was on a treadmill and I had a heavy long sleeve shirt on and a hooded sweatshirt and I had it like tied real tight. And I was max in climbing. My treadmill only goes up to 15%, but I was like running up like, I'm like, this is so dumb. Like, what am I doing?
I definitely had some moments like that leading up to this run. Like, what the heck am I doing here in this corner of my house with, my kids are over there doing things and Megan is, busy doing something else. And like, I'm just here all day on the treadmill.
Yeah. I've thought about that many times too. I'm like, this one spot in my house, in my garage, I've spent so much time in this one spot, like over the past couple months. But that's part of the Indiana experience. We can't go out and hop on a mountain, and get 2 hours of climbing and whatever really quick. We can't. I got to drive. That was part of my training. I did go a couple places in Indiana for, some climbing work and some miles. But I had to literally go, it took about an hour and 10 minutes to get there. And for you, it would take longer. Yeah.
You're
was
another
that Brown County?
40. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're another 45 minutes north of me. So, going to Brown County is attainable, but that's, if you're going to do a Saturday run, that's 2 to 3 hours just of driving just to make that run happen.
Yeah.
So
and then if
you
you're
gotta
going down
treadmill.
there. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I was lucky to kind of find a place that's like a mini Brown County, close to where I live, only about 20-minute drive, but it's like just a few trails, but there's hills. So
yeah, for me, like the closest trail system that I love is Eagle Creek, but I just get bored, like I can't climb a 50 to 75 foot hill, however many times that takes to get to a certain amount of elevation gain that you're shooting for here. So I know it sounds silly, like comparing that, climbing up and down a 50 to 75 foot hill versus just running on a treadmill. Cause That's also super boring. But I did watch every single Marvel movie during these couple months, along with every Lord of the Rings movie and every other trilogy that I could get my hands on.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah. I've been doing similar stuff. Like we just got a TV out in our garage, and just burning through shows and movies. But
I was not a Marvel fan until this year.
Yeah.
Now I know it all.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, man. Any last like stories or things you wanted to get in there about Barkley, or about just about your training, or like what you learned, or how you're feeling right now? Then we can wrap this up. I don't think we've missed any questions. But Dugos Films wanted to shout you out, says, awesome perspective and insight into the Barkley. Great quality stream. Thank you both. So thanks, Dugos.
Thank you. For me, like, I guess, like, wrap up thoughts, I don't necessarily have any like major moments that I would share, per se. And there's so much to it. One of the friends, that I've, thankfully gained out of this experience said, when it comes to the Barkley, you can either write like books about it, or you can just say it was the Barkley. And like, it's just so difficult to like put that experience into words, into any sort of succinct thought. But it was mind blowing. It was, I leveled up, just all this stuff. It was transformative. At the end of the day, one of the things going into this, besides like sort of being a personal experience, I wanted this as a leader, as a business owner, as somebody who sort of sees myself as a leader. I really, really just wanted this to be something that hopefully, I was leading by example and serving as something of an inspiration to, everybody, the everyday person out there. It is possible to put yourself outside of your limits, and you should. I think it's been very, very good for me. I hope I get the chance to continue doing stuff like that. And like, ultra running for me is the thing that I do to sort of keep myself sane. And it's the thing. It's my therapy. It's my mental health thing. And I hope, it doesn't have to be the Barkley. It can be anything. It doesn't have to be exercise, for that matter. But I hope that I can kind of highlight that aspect for things, that everybody has that within them to do something amazing. And don't be afraid of some of the obstacles that perceived or otherwise that may be in front of you. Like, if you have a passion about something, just go out and grab it. And, I'm currently a very good example of the fact that, you can potentially go do the Barkley if you want to.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. Beautiful way to wrap it up. Thank you. Yeah, thanks everyone for joining. Thanks for all the questions. We'll wrap this up here. Those of you watching on the East Coast, it's getting late. Those of you watching the replay, thank you very much. If you're listening to the podcast, thank you as well. But yeah, Matt, stay on for a little bit afterwards. We'll say bye to you after we get off live. But yeah, thanks again for joining. Yeah, I can't wait to run Cruel Jewel, or at least some of it, hopefully, with you.
Yeah, I have a suspicion, based on what I know of how you've been training, that that I'm going to be trying to keep up with you. So I'm looking forward to it.
I don't know. I mean, Mr. Barkley over here. So, yeah, we'll see. I think the heat is going to be, I think the heat and humidity is going to be a major issue. Climbing, obviously, yes. But yeah, it's going to be a challenge in more ways than just the 100 miles. That's for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Looking forward to being there with you.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining. I will be back next week, and a couple more videos in between now and then probably as well. So thanks for joining. Thanks for listening. I'll see you guys again soon. Bye.